When it comes to understanding Griffith Park, size is the enemy. At more than 4,500 acres, it's one of the largest municipal parks in the nation. Its boundaries are so expansive, its terrain so rugged, there's no one place you can stand to take it all in. But its impressive scale is also what makes Griffith Park so charming. An abandoned zoo can coexist with a merry-go-round. A rock band can rattle one side of the park, while on the other side, a mountain lion silently stalks its prey. With such sweeping diversity of landscapes and uses, how can we make sense of this place? Can we even say who it's for? The answer to these questions begins at one of LA's hidden treasures, the City Archives. LA is an idea as much as a city, a landscape of aspirations and imaginations. But behind the idea of LA are the stories of people, dreamers seeking fortune or reinvention, and those who saw the dream as an illusion. So let's uncover clues to a forgotten past in the Archives. Lost LA explores the untold history behind the fantasy of California.
Lost LA is made possible in part by a grant from Anne Ray Foundation, a Margaret A. Cargill philanthropy, the Ralph M. Parsons Foundation, and the California State Library.
So Mike, I'm researching Griffith Park and I figured I had to start at the City Archives. You probably have everything here, right?
Not everything, but quite a bit.
I mean, this room is huge. And I just see boxes everywhere I look.
There's approximately 200,000 boxes at any given time.
What do you got on Griffith Park?
We'd have Recreation and Parks Commission materials.
Okay.
So they were the ones, obviously, who were running the park.
Yeah.
We would have the master plans. We would have the concessions, contracts, leases, all sorts of correspondence and ephemeral stuff.
We can take what you have here and sort of reconstruct the entire history of Griffith Park.
Well, certainly as far back as the original donation of the property in 1896, and you know that story, right?
I mean, I know the cynical take is that Griffith donated it to the city to get rid of the tax liability, because it was a huge parcel of land.
Oh, absolutely.
It was like an island beyond the city limits.
The park did not sound anything like what people had thought of when they were thinking of what a city park would be.
Sure.
Because the best thing you could say about Griffith Park at that time was it was completely unmanaged and about as wild as anywhere around.
So how did the city council respond when Griffith wanted to give them this huge parcel of wild land?
Well, of course, they accepted it.
Yeah.
You know, they weren't stupid. You know, they were going to take the land and they would figure out what to do with it later. Of course, Griffith never really quite let go of it. I mean, even after he donated the land, he was constantly writing to the Park Commission who were overseeing it and complaining continuously about abuses to the park.
Yeah.
And who was going to pay for it, whatever was going to be done with it. And so
Through
there's
here?
an awful lot. Through here. Let's go this way. I think what you want to see is right here on our wall. And it is right here. This is the deed to the original 3,000 acres of Griffith Park that Griffith donated in 1896.
So this document here, or this indenture, as it says, this is the birth of Griffith Park, the
Absolutely.
crown jewel of LA's park system.
It certainly is. That's why we have it out on display all the time.
So what does it say here? To be used as a public park for purposes of recreation, health, and pleasure for the use and benefit of the inhabitants of the said city of Los Angeles.
Forever. That's what it says. It says forever right in the document.
And then it says down here, if those conditions are not met, the deed reverts back to the Griffith family.
Yeah, I'd like to see how well that would go over.
Right. So this is a formal legal document. Why is it so big?
Well, it's Griffith Park. I mean, a standard deed wouldn't do the job. I mean, come on.
Right. 3,000 acres.
Think about who we're talking about, too. Griffith Shea Griffith.
Right.
You know, I mean, the man did nothing by half measures.
Right.
And so why not do something this grandiose? Because the gift was grandiose.
In my quest to explore Griffith Park's past, I headed to the Autry Museum of the American West, where I met with Sarah Wilson. Sarah and the Autry staff are working on a collaborative project titled Investigating Griffith Park that will create something near and dear to my heart: the first extensive archive dedicated to Griffith Park's history. So it's just at the city archives, and I saw, there they have the original deed that transferred this land from Griffith to the city of LA. They have that framed up there, and that's coming here.
Yeah, and we have documents that celebrate that, and we also have, the history around that as well. So we'll be collecting all of this with the intention that someday this is an archive that can be added to and shared with the wider world.
So it's remarkable just how big Griffith Park is. Most city parks are not on this scale.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's just so much history has happened within these boundaries here.
It's a history that goes back for forever. History and larger movements of Los Angeles, of Southern California, of the American West, and the nation at large. These are stories that celebrate Los Angeles, that celebrate our residents, our neighbors, tourists. So we're essentially kind of finding the archives that live in people's memories, that live in their closets, so that we can build an exhibition collaboratively and to learn really what makes this place so important.
Right. And it really makes sense that the Autry's doing this, right?
Yes, we are in Griffith Park. Not everyone realizes that.
Right.
It is our backyard, it is our community.
Yeah.
And so it makes sense that we would take this project on and expand it and expound on it.
Well, that's wonderful. Can't wait to see it someday. Oh, Casey.
Oh, hey, how's it going?
Hey,
Great to see you.
Good to see you, yeah.
See you, Casey.
So you want to spend a little bit more time inside Griffith Park?
Yeah, are the horses ready?
The horses are ready, let's go.
All right, I got my cowboy hat.
We're gonna hit the trail, here we go.
All
Good
right,
to see you.
let's do
Have
it.
fun, guys.
Thank you. Few people know Griffith Park's lore better than writer Casey Schreiner, founder of the popular Modern Hiker website. And although walking is definitely Casey's preferred mode of transportation, we had a lot of parkland to see. So we borrowed a couple horses and saddled up. So there are a lot of cynical explanations for why Griffith donated this land to the city. But I think even if we grant all of that, it's clear that he really did believe in public parks.
Oh, absolutely. There's a lot of ulterior motives for those tax dodge reasons. This wasn't the first or the last thing that Griffith donated or sold at a loss to the city.
Yeah.
But Griffith definitely cared about parks. He toured Europe with his family and really found that all the major cities there and other cities in the US like Boston and Hartford had extensive city parks. And he really wanted something similar for Los Angeles because he saw LA being a big city on the West Coast.
And thanks to his affection for parks, LA has one of the largest municipal parks in the country.
Yeah, it was at the time of its donation, I think it might have been the largest. It was 5 times the size of Central Park in New York. And at the time, this wasn't even part of LA boundaries. So we did a pretty good job on that first run. All right, shall we?
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll see you guys later.
Don't go anywhere. Now we're at Park Ranger headquarters.
Awesome.
And there is a visitor center here.
Right. And this is the historic Adobe. It's probably the oldest building in Griffith Park.
Yep.
Yeah. I think these walls date to 1853.
Yeah, probably around that time. Yeah.
Wow. Adobe of the Rancho Los Feliz. So many of the adobes from the old Mexican and Spanish times have been.
Very easily could have been torn down,
Yeah.
replaced by something more modern.
Yeah.
The interior is all redone and is like a very modern office, but the fact that the exterior is still this original wall is pretty cool.
One of the things I love about Griffith Park is that there are all these layers of history going back, hundreds or even thousands of years.
And this adobe here seems like one of the best examples of that.
Yes, so this is the only building remaining from the original Rancho Los Feliz.
Right.
There used to be more, obviously, various fires and things took them down. And there was one woman in particular, Doña Maria Ignacia Verdugo, who was a widow of one of the Felizes. And she really secured the land rights and the water rights during a time when this was Spain, then New Spain, then Mexico, and then America. And her paperwork basically survived all of that transition. So she was a very smart lady.
Certainly. And the Feliz family, they were not the first ones here, right?
Jose Vicente Feliz was one of the guys who came through in 1775 on the de Anza expedition, basically from Mexico up to Monterey. They were the first Europeans to come through what is today Griffith Park. They camped somewhere along the LA River. We're not exactly sure where, but there's actually the de Anza National Historic Trail is right behind this building. And that runs from Arizona up to Monterey today.
It's conceivable they could have camped here. I mean, this is
They could have
nice
camped
spot,
here,
a lot of oak trees.
but the people who were here before them were the Gabrieleño Tongva.
Right.
And there is evidence now that initially they thought there was kind of one settlement in Griffith Park, and now new scholarship is leaning towards maybe three, and one of them might be here. So they're still working on that. They were here for obviously thousands of years before the Spanish ever even knew that this was a place that they could walk to.
So why isn't this park today called, Tongva Park or Feliz Park?
Well, part of it is just because a sort of general cultural blindness to the indigenous people who were here.
Yeah.
Kind of countrywide, but especially here in LA. We're getting better about it. There's a lot more people who are kind of coming forward and telling those stories, which is great.
Right.
But the reason it's called Griffith Park is because after the Los Felices kind of lost it through some potentially shady dealings with American lawyers, the land passed hands a couple times and eventually got into the hands of a guy named Griffith Jenkins Griffith.
A Welsh immigrant who made his fortune in mining, Griffith J. Griffith donated 3,015 acres of his Rancho Los Feliz to the city in 1896. Griffith wanted the land to become a place of recreation for all of Los Angeles to enjoy. It was a democratic vision, but how would the city inscribe Griffith's vision in the landscape? Hilly and undeveloped, those 3,000 acres were a blank slate.
So a park can be a lot of things, right? It can be Pershing Square or Yosemite.
Right.
And obviously the idea of a park has changed a lot over time, and it's constantly evolving. 1896, when Griffith donates the land to the city, what's his vision for the park?
So yeah, at that time, a lot of the parks, especially in the States, were very manicured. They're landscaped, they're sort of that English-style garden. And Griffith kind of had a vision for both of those things in Griffith Park. He wanted some of those developed areas for things like playgrounds, golf courses, that sort of thing. But he also wanted to make sure that the natural playground of the Chaparral was still preserved in its sort of rugged state.
Well, he really accomplished that.
Still today, over 100 years later, the park is still pretty much like that. We've got that rugged landscape that can support mountain lions, and then we've also got things like what we're about to go see.
There's no substitute for a live horse, but the mechanical steeds of Griffith Park's merry-go-round have been trotting in circles since 1935. It was here that Walt Disney sat on a bench, watched his daughters ride the carousel, and dreamed up a magic kingdom that parents and children could enjoy together. But Casey and I didn't ride here to discuss Disneyland. Instead, we met up with historian Allison Rose Jefferson to learn about an event that took place here on Memorial Day, 1961. A civil disturbance that challenged the notion that Griffith's Park was for everyone.
This incident that happened at Memorial Day in 1961, and it was a situation that was some African American kids who had come to enjoy themselves on that particular day here at the merry-go-round, and they were jumping on and off and skipping out from paying. And the proprietors were some white guys, and they weren't so happy about them skipping out and paying. And so then the proprietors called the police. And this is during a time when we had Chief Parker and his police. And Chief Parker, at the time, was very antagonistic towards the African American community. It was a busy day here at the park, and when the police got here, they had an altercation with the crowd because they were calling people names. They were using racial slurs, and they used that N-word, and the young people kind of got a little upset.
And they basically
the owners,
shut down the park, didn't they?
And they shut down the park. There were more African Americans coming to use the park, as well as Mexican Americans. And the people that were running the concession here were feeling a little overwhelmed, I think, that day. It was the time of the Freedom Rides as well, where the folks in Montgomery, Alabama, who were down there to protest segregation and discrimination, had been attacked. So the social context of the time was all over the nation, young people involved in expressing themselves in terms of various kinds of civil rights and taking advantage of the various opportunities that were available to them.
In fact, the young men who hopped on and off the carousel explicitly invoked that political context, quipping that they were freedom riders. That explains why bystanders rushed to their defense. When police arrived, the crowd grew angry and chanted, "This isn't Alabama."
And the kids got accused and arrested and wound up having to spend a little time in county jail. So that just shows the attitude of trying to vilify these young men.
So this event in 1961, the melee or the riot or the protest or whatever label you put on it, it really sort of challenged the notion that Griffith Park was for everybody, right?
There was a new sense of what the civil rights struggle was about during that time, and I think the kids who were participating in the melee were just kind of feeling their oats as young people here in Los Angeles, and that's something that has carried over from earlier years of the park's development. Even though there were these rights struggles that were here and the melee situation that happened, African Americans had been using the park earlier for golf, for picnics.
And I guess it all kind of leads to the present day when sort of these picnic grounds right around the merry-go-round, it's where people from all different backgrounds in LA kind of meet and share the space.
Yeah.
And that was all sort of in the spirit of what Griffith intended for this place.
Although the merry-go-round has been a social and political flashpoint, it remains a park favorite and fun as ever.
So it looks like a carefree place for children, but there have been a lot of serious political protests here.
Right, so this is kind of always been a melting pot area for the park, which leads to a lot of protests and events. One of the first Love-Ins was here, the first Gay-In was here as well as kind of in the mid-late 60s, a lot of biker rallies that caused some extra work for the LAPD.
So there's really so much history here in Griffith Park and so many layers that you could probably point to any place here and there's a story.
Right. So we were just down where the Autry and the zoo are right now, and that used to be what was known as the Griffith Reservation, which was kind of land that Griffith had preserved for himself until after he died, and then it would be kind of reverted back to the park. That eventually became the Griffith Park Airfield, which then was like a quasi-military use because the National Guard was there.
Yeah.
And then the military used it for housing of veterans.
Housing here
during
in the
World
park?
War II. Yep.
Wow.
For quite some time, actually longer than anyone expected them to. Was one of the first integrated housing units in Los Angeles as well, until around the 1950s when, you know, anyone paying for anything became communism. So they decided to kind of bulldoze the whole village, kick everybody out, even though they were veterans who were living there. That's when the freeways came in as well.
So there you go, there's a story for every acre here.
Story for everything.
Right.
Like we've said, there's so many stories in Griffith Park, and really the guy who tells them the best is Mike Eberts. His book, Griffith Park: A Centennial History, is the best history that's been written about this park.
Hi, Mike. Nathan Masters.
Oh, hi, Nathan.
Hi, thanks for
Hello.
meeting us
Mike.
here.
Nice to see you again.
Yeah, good to see you too.
So there are all these theories about why Griffith donated the land to the city. What's your take on that?
Well, he was a public-spirited guy, probably just about from the time he came to Los Angeles. He had sold the city some water rights along the LA River for well below market cost, and this is something the city really needed because the LA River was the city's lifeline back then. Sure. He also had done other good works, like he had offered homesteads to journalists. He had made some overtures about giving some land for a park, but this was his, by far his biggest gift.
So I think it's fair to say that Griffith had a charitable streak, but his reputation was probably forever tarnished by what happened later.
September 1903, Griffith's behavior is a little weird. His wife suggests that they take a vacation and they go to Santa Monica. The hotel staff later reported that his behavior was strange. He would insist on switching the plates and saucers because he was afraid that somebody was trying to poison him, perhaps the Pope.
But he was virulently anti-Catholic.
Yes, yes, he was. And it was hardwired into him very young. Where and when Griffith grew up, there was a virulent anti-Catholicism, and unfortunately, he brought that across the ocean with him. Griffith, at his height, was drinking perhaps 2 quarts of whiskey a day.
Wow.
It's the last day of the vacation. Tina, Colonel Griffith's wife, is addressing some postcards. And Griffith comes into the room with her prayer book in one hand and his revolver in the other. He hands her the prayer book, and he starts reading her questions off of a menu card. He's got the revolver on her, and the questions were, did she have something to do with the death of a family friend whose property she inherited? Was she now slowly poisoning him? A third one was, had she always been faithful to him? And he didn't get to the 4th question. He fired. The shot, instead of hitting her dead center, it took her eye out, but she lived. And she survived. The defense developed the theory that Griffith had a Jekyll and Hyde personality, that Griffith was not just drunk, but crazy drunk. Griffith got off with 2 years in prison, which most people around town thought was absurdly light.
Absolutely, yeah, 2 years in prison.
Yeah, the record is that Griffith did not ask for special favors. The word is that when he got out, he had gotten a handle on his alcoholism, and he was a lot saner.
Yeah, what's interesting is he came out of prison with a really strong desire to work hard to get back to his station in life. That's when he wrote his book about the park philosophy. He donated money for the Greek theater and the observatory.
He died, what, in the 1920s?
1919.
1919. What was his reputation upon his death?
I think the city was used to having him back. I think he was still a flawed figure. The building of the observatory had been delayed, and there's the feeling that the Parks Department kind of delayed until Griffith was out of the way.
Mm-hmm. And there were also movements around that time, probably, I'm not sure if it was after or before his death, but there was a movement to rename Griffith Park because his name was sullied, but it's in the deed that it has to be Griffith Park.
Couldn't do it.
But they did rename Griffith Peak, which is now Mount Hollywood.
Right. Thank you very much. Yeah, good to see you. Yeah.
Thanks, Mike.
So LA really is fortunate to have such a huge municipal park up here at the tail end of the Santa Monica Mountains. But the scale of this place really does remind you just how park poor the rest of LA is, or most of LA.
So the Trust for Public Land every year does this thing called the Park Score Index, where they rank America's 100 biggest cities in terms of park equity, park quality, park access.
Yeah.
And LA usually ranks in the bottom third on that, which is pretty bad considering how much money we have. But you come up to a place like Griffith Park, and it's really incredible. It kind of gives you an idea of what we could have if we had more people with the foresight of Griffith J. Griffith, more people who took care of the park afterward, and kind of extended this network out into the city.
Challenge, I guess, now is how do you better connect the park here to the rest of the city?
Right.
Because that's who the park really is for.
Right. Griffith Park is for Angelinos, and it's
All
for everybody.
Angelinos, yeah.
And when you look out at LA from an angle like this, you can see how many Angelinos there are and how few of them can easily get into Griffith Park.
Right, and they're all around us.
They're all around, they're behind there, they're everywhere.
Right.
And here we are 120 years later, and we're still trying to figure out how we make this park accessible for everybody.
Yeah, well, it's a work in progress.
It's a work in progress, and it
120
is,
years later.
it's a beautiful thing, and for all of its shortcomings, Griffith Park is an incredible and amazing place in LA, and for my money, it's one of the best city parks in the entire country.
I agree.
This is a little less responsive.
Whoa. Okay. Should we start talking, or? Okay. So, let's wait for Casey. There we go. So you've been working on your book, Mike Ebert's.
Yeah, the horses don't want to move this way.
Lost LA is made possible in part by a grant from Anne Ray Foundation, a Margaret A. Cargill philanthropy, the Ralph M. Parsons Foundation, and the California State Library.